the most watched Apple TV Plus shows, and more. This is TV Plus Talk on MacVoices.
Hello, hello. Welcome to TV Plus Talk, where me, Charlotte Henry, and him, Chuck Joyner, discuss everything in the world of Apple TV Plus. We're doing this on quite a fun day, actually. We're recording this just an hour, less than an hour, before we start hearing all the latest, what we assume is Apple iPhone stuff. I'll be very interested to see, well, not just because I need a new iPhone, but also because I'll be interested to see if we get any TV Plus stuff, what the deals are. You know, they normally at least put a deal in for TV Plus when you get a new iPhone and so on. So it'll be very interesting to see what part, if any, TV Plus plays in the upcoming event. We'll obviously unpack it in the next show. But hello, Chuck. How are things going? Are you excited for this Apple event?
Oh, sure. You have to be excited for every Apple event. Sometimes it feels like all the spoilers and all the leaks and all those articles that are out, especially in the last week or two before an event, kind of spoil some of it. So I try to avoid it. But at the end of the day, Apple often, not as like they used to be able to, but often pull out a little surprise. And I'm hoping there will be something here.
Yes, listeners' views. Chuck didn't like it when I started trying to find out what was happening at events. When I was reporting for the Mac Observer, Chuck always got annoyed at me when I was trying to find out what was going on and work out what was going on ahead of the events. I was told I was spoiling all the fun. But anyway, what's a reporter meant to do if you not spoil the fun?
Yeah, that was your job. Just because I didn't like it didn't mean you shouldn't do it. So
just because he boycotted all my work for weeks doesn't mean, you know.
Well, there's some truth to that, not just yours, but when I see something that says latest leak, I just ignore it because it's not real. It's all clickbait. So I want facts, not speculation.
I would never produce clickbait. Outrageous.
You didn't disappoint me, Charlotte. You just went for that bait right away.
Yeah, exactly. Always. Interestingly, we'll crack on with the TV Plus stuff because we've got some data on the most popular shows. I think it's all through JustWatch. I have to tell you, I don't know what your take is, Chuck. I'm always slightly surprised when I see what the popular shows and series and films on Apple TV Plus are. So I know that there's a thing that on Netflix is not always the big hits that you think are the most popular that actually get the numbers, right? It's often the mediocre stuff that people have on in the background while they've got TV, while they're doing some work or the ironing or something. As you and I have discussed before, that Apple kind of doesn't do that stuff. So it's interesting to see what's on the top 10. Can you guess what the most popular show in August was on Apple TV Plus?
I'm cheating because, of course, I've seen the article.
Oh, I wondered if you were cheating. Go on.
Yes, I have it right here. Chief of War was number one, which
listen.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Jason Momoa's. No, I was just going to say Jason Momoa's arms are always going to get viewers, right?
Okay. I'm
that's
sure
just
he'd be
the world
happy
we
to
live
that.
in. Let's be honest.
Well, but it also, I believe, with the possible exception of Foundation, I think this is the most recent one to be released. I'm not sure whether Foundation came. Chief of War came first or Invasion came first.
Sure.
But Chief of War is brand new.
Similar time, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, but they're in the top three. Foundation is number two. So, and Foundation, the new season just started. So I was not surprised to see those first three. It felt very logical.
Sure, I agree with you. Let me just rattle quickly through the top 10 shows. It's Chief of War, Foundation, Invasion, as you've said. Then number 4 is Platonic. Number 5 is Smoke. 6 is Severance. 7 is The Studio. 8 is Murderbot. 9 is Slow Horses. 10 is Stick. There are some shows that have hung around a bit, right? I mean, I'm sure Apple is very pleased that Slow Horses keeps up the numbers. Severance keeps doing numbers. those investments are kind of paying off, right?
Yes, I definitely. And to your point about Netflix, when you see some of those less popular shows or at least less visible shows, I feel like sometimes they're almost just like comfort food. To your point, they put them on as almost
100%.
audio and video wallpaper in back. And Apple TV Plus, this list to me validates something we've been saying for a while, that this is TV that people are paying attention to more than just letting it drone on somewhere. So, and maybe I'm just interpreting it the way I want to, but I mean, what here has been around for a long time? Slow Horses has multiple seasons, but that's not a kind of show that just you leave on in the background.
No, I don't really think any of these shows are kind of. I don't think you'd get very far with Foundation or Severance or something on in the background. So I think you're right that that's not what's happening with these shows. Quickly, let's look at the movies that are doing the best numbers on Apple TV Plus from August. Was The Gorge, Killers of the Flower Moon is still there, Fountain of Youth, Echo Valley Coda is still there, Tetris, which you and I loved, Napoleon, The Family Plan, Wolves, and Fly Me to the Moon. Now, those have kind of hung around a bit longer, haven't they?
They have. Those. Yeah, they have. And I don't know, I guess I view movies as a little bit different kind of watching experience as the series. So I do want to point out that The Gorge, you heard it here first. We picked The Gorge quite a while back when nobody had seemed to hear of it because it seemed to get so little publicity. And now all of a sudden there it is at the top of the list. And it's, if I recall correctly, it's up for some awards. You know better about that than I do. Napoleon is still hanging in there. I know we disagreed on Napoleon, but it's there too.
Just on The Gorge, it's got, as we said at the time, amazing cast. It's got Sigourney Weaver in there, if you don't mind. And also it's got music by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. So, I am a Trent Reznor fangirl. So,
yeah. Tetris, I was surprised to see is still around because that's been for quite a while.
Yeah, it is. It has been. Go back to the episode where Chuck and I discussed it because we both really liked it. And if you haven't seen it, you should. It kind of brings us nicely to one of the main things we want to discuss, which we do keep coming back to, but we've got a bit of time to dive into it, which is there's an article on Macwell talking about dropping Netflix for Apple TV Plus. It's been floating around a while, this discussion. So the question is Apple TV Plus better value than Netflix?
It depends.
You've said before, for you personally, it is.
Yeah, and I think that to your point about we're talking about audio video wallpaper, Netflix may be a better choice because it's got a much deeper back catalog of comfort shows. But if you're looking for new things to watch that are not quite as formulaic as a lot of content that seems to be out there right now, it's. I think it depends on you. I think it depends on your household. Do you have kids in the household or not? Does your significant other have a different viewing style or viewing habits than you do? But I think they're both fine choices. It just depends on which one suits you better at any given moment.
We should also note there's quite significant price differences. For Apple TV Plus is still, even depending on whichever way you get it, cheaper than the comparable Netflix tier.
Right. And
which, does matter.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. And again, I come back to my old formula of, how many hours per month are you watching and what is it costing you per month to watch it? And I'm quick to say, really watch it. We're back to the discussion of, how much are you really paying attention or do you just have it on the background droning on? So, do some quick math and figure out what is most important to you. And then the answers will magically appear.
Yeah. And there's also the thing of bundling. So I get Apple TV Plus as part of an Apple One bundle. So the overall price of both Apple TV Plus and the Apple One bundle is pretty good for me. It works out. It's not cheap. I'm paying £37 a month now for the top tier bundle, which is, not insignificant, but you're getting a lot for that. Basically, if you get any Apple One bundle, you get TV Plus thrown in there. It's the basic thing. So in a way, Netflix will always be a sort of extra. I actually have it thrown in with a TV bundle I have. But if you're an Apple user, a Mac user, an iPhone user, using services like iCloud, maybe even Apple Music instead of Spotify, it's actually a pretty competitive price point within the bundles. And I think people, when they're talking about streaming services, neglect when they're talking about Apple within the world of streaming. Let me put it that way, because there's a lot of discussion about bundling in streaming. But when they're talking about Apple, they neglect it as perhaps a part of the whole and those various bundles and services.
Yeah, and the bundles and services really do. I mean, in some ways, it just confuses the consumer because, okay, I picked that bundle up, and sometimes I think, if I remember correctly, like the discounts last for maybe 3 months, and then they kick over to normal. Others, you buy a bundle
for change it every time, don't they?
Yeah, and so it really is difficult to do an evaluation of what you're getting and how much it's really costing you, because okay, so we pick up a bundle with Apple TV Plus and Peacock and I don't know what else, and so which one am I watching more? Am I watching more Peacock? Am I watching more Apple TV Plus?
Which one is free?
Well, yes, exactly. And I need to put a date on my calendar when my streaming service deal expires to make sure that all of a sudden I don't go from maybe $10 or $15 a month to $40 or $50 a month. So, it's a challenge.
Yeah. You and I could do a whole show, I think, on a subscription management and bundle management and all those things. I think you and I could do a long conversation on that. But I think there's still the perception that there is not much on Apple TV Plus. You and I have highlighted lots of times that there is. I think that those two lists that we just read out show that there is plenty to watch on TV Plus. I still think people think there's just so much more on Netflix, and you just kind of, quote unquote, have to have Netflix. I think there's still that perception. And when I looked into the data, when I was writing my book, Streaming Wars, October the 3rd in the UK, October 28th in the US, when I looked into the data for that book, it showed that basically people are picking Netflix and one other service. People seem to have Netflix as their basic core service still.
Yeah. Interestingly, this is sort of not related, but it's a good example, I think. I'm helping a good friend move into a new home, and as a result,
you're a good friend.
What?
You're a good friend to agree to do that.
Yeah. Well, they're evaluating. They're getting a new cable service, moving to a new town, so getting a new cable service, and so the one bundle that was offered to them was 120 channels. Plus as internet, 120 channels. Interestingly, Apple TV Plus and Peacock for a limited time. Okay, great. I was happy to see Apple TV Plus in there, and Peacock is fine for some of what they deliver. But when you look at the list,
your sport on Peacock?
I believe so. Not sure, but I believe so.
Interesting.
Yeah. But what really got me is, okay, here's this list of 120 channels, and there are like 100 of them that I've never heard of at all.
Sure.
And there are 20 that I've heard of, and probably about 6 of those would be watched. And yet, in theory, you're paying for at least something for all of those channels. Part of your money is going to all those channels.
Of course. I mean, this is the classic thing about the cable bundle, isn't it? This is the conversation that's ongoing around cord cutting. And now, hence the reason why we make this show, Apple is part of that discussion, the cord cutting, discussion. If you're a baseball fan, you can watch baseball on, well, we discussed the last show, you might not be able to do that for much longer, but at the moment you can watch baseball. Looks like you're going to be able to get Formula One on Apple. So there's one part of your cord cutting. Netflix, people have started to do their DIY bundles, of which Apple is a part. But I think people are wanting to go back to the more simplistic thing of, I pay X amount a month. Yeah, it's quite a bit, but I get everything and I don't have to think about it.
And I've seen that happen to people where, they're paying $300 or $350 a month, $300 to $350 a month. And yeah, they get everything. And isn't that wonderful? And it's like, okay, but what channels and how much are you really watching? And then they start to do the math, and it's like, oh my God, do you understand? That's $350 a month.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
I mean, if we keep it simple and say 12 months at $300, what is that? $3,600? $3,600 for cable or bundling, or call it whatever you will. That's insane.
But the thing that Apple does, and I want to return to this point, because what we were really talking about was Netflix versus Apple and value for money. So one, yes, it's the programming is part of that discussion, but also the associated services. So as I said, I think if you're using a couple of Apple services or have an Apple device that, if a Mac and an iPhone are your daily drivers, it is economical sense, I would say, to get an Apple One bundle, and that throws in Apple TV Plus with it. And therefore that is good money. There is a different discussion if you're just buying Apple TV Plus separately to watch on your big screen TV at home. That is a different discussion.
It's a different discussion, but it's still a valid point that Apple TV Plus may be an alternative to Netflix.
Sure.
Because where I was going with the 120 channels, Charlotte, was what you just said about Netflix being the basic, that everybody says, oh, I have to have it. I mean, a number of years ago now, when cable TV was making its inroads, well, you had to have it. You had to buy their package. And most people bought the top package because they just had to have everything. And I think now we've hit a point where unless you just have money to burn, you have to be just a little more discerning and a little more intelligent about what you subscribe to.
Yeah, oh, totally. This is our ongoing theme in a lot that I write about, of people managing their streaming services and the frustration with that. If you're a big movie fan, you have to keep up to date with where things go. If you want different seasons of different shows, they seem to move from one service to the other. I turned on Netflix the other day and I'm pretty sure I found Star Trek in there, whereas I thought that was only on Paramount Plus. Anyway, that might be a UK thing. But I was confused when I saw Catherine Janeway's picture jump up on me in Netflix. I'll have to dive into that when I get back to you. But anyway, I think people are not doing the maths you're talking about. And I think there's still the perception there's nothing, quote unquote, nothing for me on Apple TV Plus once you've watched like Ted Lasso. So yeah, I think it is an ongoing discussion. I think if Apple can hold its price point steady, it will be a really competitive challenger to some of the other services. I do think that. I wonder actually, now that I'm sort of thinking out loud, I wonder if actually the comparison that you should do pound for pound or dollar for dollar is not really Netflix. I think people are just always going to get Netflix, whether it's because of Wednesday or Stranger Things or whatever else. But I think you could have a discussion about, do you want Apple TV Plus or Paramount Plus, for example, or Peacock, or there's various different things, right? And I think that is where Apple should be competing.
Netflix is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Let's face it. I mean, Disney/Hulu were the only things that really ever had a chance of challenging.
Disney Plus is the other one.
Yeah, I mean, all these others, they try to bring 3 or 4 channels together and create something new. Paramount took an interesting move and tried to sequester its stuff, as did NBC with Peacock. And I guess you can argue that to varying degrees they've been minor minor success stories, but Netflix still rules the roost.
Oh, if you look at any subscriber data, it's miles ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Miles.
I don't know how to. I want to encourage people to be smarter about the way they spend their entertainment dollars here, but we're right back to it. I think Apple TV Plus needs to be part of the consideration. And as you said, if you are an Apple person and you use some of the other services, notably iCloud or Apple Music, a bundle is an amazing value, and you get Apple TV Plus as part of that value.
Okay. Related is there's some story. We read a story on 95 Mac by Ryan Christoffel. He headlined it, Apple is making the movies Hollywood won't, and it's paying off big, which is interesting. Now, let's go back to that list we started with about the most watched Apple TV Plus movies. Killers of the Flower Moon, that did go into cinemas, as did Coda. I mean, lots of them have gone into cinemas now that I look at that list, but they needed Apple, and frankly, Apple's money to get made. I think others would have made Coda, but that's quite serious. And, Apple picked up the Best Picture Oscar ahead of something Netflix had tried to do for years. Every time I mention Coda, it have to be mentioned. Tetris, no one made that movie, but it's a great movie that's worth jumping into Apple TV Plus for. Those movies do give the TV Plus service and Apple by extension a bit of cultural cachet, doesn't it?
I think it does. I mean, I'm reviewing the article again here, and something that I tend to overlook, but if I stop and think about it, but to quote it, sequels, remakes, and IP-based films are now dominate the film market, and originality is struggling. And that's 100%. Where the Gorge, the Gorge was very original as far as I was concerned, because, and I think I said this when we first recommended it, that it had 3 components that I normally would have turned me off, but they were so well done and they were so well woven together that it created a very compelling story and a compelling movie. I think Hollywood is looking for those big hits, like everybody is. But maybe Apple and their philosophy, maybe if they get one, great. They certainly got one with F1. But if they can get something that appeals to a faction of people, that's good enough. And by the way, then they have it to enhance their streaming service as well.
Yeah, there's some really interesting quotes from a Spike Lee and Denzel Washington interview with Vanity Fair. That Denzel Washington said Apple, also gave us a lot of money to make the film, which is they're talking about highest to lowest. And it said, so then Spike Lee said, the industry has changed, time has changed, so we've got to change with the times. This film would not have been made without Apple. That's just the truth. So that's Spike Lee. The financial clout Apple has, it isn't going to live or die on the back of a movie release. Apple, is much more interesting what's about to watch once we finish recording this show, which is the iPhone release. That's what matters much more to Apple. That's what the company builds on. They can afford to give Spike Lee and Denzel Washington quite a bit of money to make a movie, and it's not going to, it's pocket change almost for a company like Apple. And so they have the capacity to fund things that Hollywood simply can't. And that is a really fascinating position to watch. And it seems to be paying dividends for Apple. As I say, the Oscar, F1, you were right to point out. Who knows what awards that's going to pick up as the year goes on. It's really interesting. Now, and obviously at some point they want money back from them, and they will start getting money back if these make big box offices or attract more subscribers. But I can only repeat myself. Apple doesn't live or die on box office hits and TV Plus subscriptions. So it can take these risks. Frankly, I don't think Spike Lee and Denzel Washington are a risk. Two superstars, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I'll repeat sort of the traditional wisdom that Apple plays the long game. and they're willing to take some risks. They're willing to take some losses up front to build the bedrock to move forward. Another thing I thought was really that I don't think I really knew this, but again, to quote, all signs indicate that Wolves would have flopped at the box office, but on Apple TV Plus, it quickly became the streamer's best performing movie of all time.
This is such a fascinating point. It's such a good point because you're so much more likely to take a punt on a film on a streaming service. I know I am. Like, sit down and watch it, even if it might not be exactly what you want. You might say, I'll give it 20 minutes, see if I get into it. If I don't like it, doesn't matter. Haven't bought a ticket at the cinema, haven't spent the time going to the cinema. It's pretty risk-free to watch the first bit of a film and see if you get into it. Whereas it doesn't. So people have a chance to look at these films, decide if they're interested in them, and carry on or not. And if the movie is good, well, obviously it pays off for Apple.
Yeah. And again, okay, if you throw it out to the box office, we've heard different things. We heard that Apple was going to abandon the box office and just do things for Apple TV Plus. And then they kind of broke the rule with F1 and have had an incredible success. The Killers of the Flower Moon, not so much. So it kind of goes. How much of a risk is it for Apple to throw it out to the box office and then bring it to Apple TV Plus? Totally. Is the box office just free money, no matter how great or how poorly it performs, because they're really building it for Apple TV Plus?
Well, it's free money, and it's also the only way you can get into some of the prestigious awards.
Yeah, and again, that's so much your world, and I forget about that part. You're right.
Yeah, it's important. There's a story I'm very excited in, Chuck, as we come to the end of this episode that I do have to discuss with you. And that is James Corden and his writing partner on Gavin and Stacey, Ruth Jones, have signed a multi-million-pound deal with Apple TV Plus, according to The Sun, and it will be their follow-up to Gavin and Stacey. Now, I don't think it's an affiliated story. I don't think we're going to see Uncle Bryn and everyone else come back. Well, Gavin and Stacey themselves. But it's going to have an all-British cast. It's going to be a 10-part comedy drama series. Apparently, the BBC and Amazon and Netflix were all interested in getting the pair to write the show, but Apple sealed the deal. Now, this is particularly exciting for me as a Brit. You seem relatively unmoved by this, but I can't express to you how big the Gavin and Stacey finale was. So the finale that was shown at Christmas has been watched by 19.1 million people. So that is approaching 1 in 3 people in the UK watched it. That's huge. It basically, it kind of shut down that hour on Christmas Day. It's worth noting, and it's picked up in this Sun story, that James Corden, of course, had a relationship with Apple already, because Carpool Karaoke, when he was doing the late night show, used to go out through Apple as a separate thing. So it's quite interesting. He's obviously happy working with Apple, and he'll be coming back to work with them again. How's James Corden perceived in the US after his late night stint?
I can't answer that, Charlotte. I did not watch the late night show. I don't think he was
the late show, wasn't it, with Corden?
Or I guess it was the late show. But I have no frame of reference. The only James Corden I've ever paid any attention to for any amount of time was Carpool Karaoke, and that was definitely not my thing. And so, and I'm sorry, I hope this won't offend you, but I don't know anything about Gavin and Stacey. So
don't know anything about Gavin, so we'll talk about it off air.
Well, give for the folks that are like me, give us just like a 30-second summary of Gavin and Stacey, and what is it?
30 seconds. Okay, so Gavin and Stacey, particularly at the beginning, were the frontline characters. One is a sort of Essex boy. One is a little girl from the valleys of Wales. They fall in love. but both have to go to their different places to leave. You can imagine how it goes. In amongst it are their best friends, Smithy, played by James Corden, and Nessa, played by Ruth Jones. Obviously, one is Welsh, one is English. And the whole thing comes together with their friends, their families, and this is an ongoing show. And it got hugely, hugely popular. I don't know what spoilers do. It culminated in the finale at Christmas. There was one finale which we thought was the end, but left people quite unsatisfied. And so they came back over Christmas and did the special to finish it off, which I think people were a bit happier with how it ended. And so they're coming back together. And as I say, it was a huge classic British sort of comedy drama. There are some very famous moments, including James Smithy ordering a curry takeaway, which is all I can say. But if you ask anyone about Smithy's takeaway order, most people in Britain can recite what that order is. I'll leave the link in the show notes because it's a funny moment. But yeah, it was a huge hit. It's interesting that Corden can do the sort of, and he gets quite a lot of stick here. He's kind of not treated that nicely in Britain. Is often mocked in Britain. Not something I particularly had much sympathy for. I think he's kind of quite clever at what he does. But anyway, he's often not been sort of castigated in Britain, but seems to be quite comfortable in the US, quite comfortable working with US companies. The deal seems to be about £8 million for this show, and it will be due in 2027. So that's a hell of a lot of money that Apple are putting up for it. It'll be interesting if they kind of repeat the Gavin and Stacey formula. I'll be very interested to see how they play this out, and I'll definitely be watching it. But we've got sort of 18 months, 2 years until then. But I was just really struck by it being Apple that came and took on these two very quintessentially British writers.
I think, though, you've hit something that we've watched Apple do repeatedly. And right now, I'm so sorry, I'm drawing a blank, but we see films that are produced in native languages and largely subtitled for the US. Apple, again, not only do they take a long view, they're taking a global view. They're not just producing shows for the US. Well, Slow Horses is a great example that is not necessarily subtitled, but I know, but we've joked about this on camera and off, that there's certain references, certain idioms that I have to go and look up and say, okay, I want to understand what that means to a UK audience because it is set in the UK, and those kind of things make me work a little bit. But it's the kind of show that I don't mind doing that, so that I expand my horizons a little bit. But more importantly, I enjoy the show. So
yeah, and stepping away from English language, one of the ones that came to my mind was Pachinko. It's based on a novel, but I think it was in Korean, or Japanese, and in English, different bits of it, wasn't it? And that was quite, I think, quite a significant show. So yeah, all these things are worth happening. It's another way Apple competes with Netflix as well, because Netflix makes stuff in all global languages and is huge in those kind of regional, local shows. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't think we can compare what Ruth Jones and James Corden will compare to Pachinko, but it should be quite fun. It should bring some warmth. I'm pleased they're kind of working together again, because they're obviously a good writing team, and yeah, I look forward to that in kind of 18 months, 2 years.
Well, think about the teams behind Ted Lasso, and and the characters and some of it's almost like some of these actors are creating relationships with Apple. And to your point, James Corden did. Brett Goldstein has to some degree. That to me says that they must be relatively easy to work with. And I recognize that Apple's not necessarily the direct studio, but there's a relationship there that Apple's willing to pay for the talent. The talent seems to like working in those environments.
Well, I suspect the checkbook helps.
Yeah, it wasn't Apple. Scarlett Johansson, what was the movie that she did that they decided not to put in cinemas?
Oh, I don't remember. What I do remember is there being stories about how Tim Cook leaving notes. This was years ago, right at the beginning of TV Plus, when it was worried we would see the Apple control freakery, leaving notes about do they have to swear so much or something. I think a lot of that has gone. So maybe our Apple are, easy enough to work with. As I say, I suspect the checkbook helps quite a lot as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And to Apple's credit, that you're right, that was a huge concern because in today's world, frankly, just a lot of those kind of shows wouldn't sell nearly as well because they appear borderline unrealistic. So
fun, lots going on.
Yeah, it's fun to watch, and it's fun to bat it about and see what happens in a few months.
We certainly will. I look forward to hearing more about that James Corden Ruth Jones show. Well, Chuck, we've rattled through a whole load of stuff again. Where can people keep up with you?
They can find me over at MacVoices.com. That's where I talk to a lot of interesting people, have some great panel discussions, and also you can find TV Plus Talk over there as well. And on the socials, I'm at Chuck Joyner. Charlotte, where can folks connect with you?
Yes, I'm at Charlotte A. Henry across social media. Head over to theedition.net for blog posts, live blogs, podcasts, some video, and most importantly, the newsletter. I'd love it if you signed up over there to get my paid newsletter a couple of times a week, covering all things at the crossover of culture, media, and sport. As I mentioned, I have a book coming out in October called Streaming Wars. You can buy it basically wherever you like to order your books from. So if you enjoy our conversation about streaming, you might well enjoy that book as well. We'll be back in a couple of weeks and we'll see you then.
Thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.